Hello and welcome back to Eve's Space Project. Now, as you can see, we're just jumping right into it. We're exactly where we left off last time, and we are just time warping through to complete this mission. We have a whole load of Kerbals that we need to keep in orbit for a certain amount of time, and then we need to return them safely back down to Eve. Every time this confuses me because I'm using this mod. Now, what's actually going on in this episode is I've also got a problem in this episode as well with some jumbled up things and some lost footage. This and the last episode were all filmed together. But I wanted to show you a lot more of the details on it, so I thought I'd sort of keep this out. And it's also a good showcase for a couple of these mods. I absolutely love them. Tundra Exploration Systems, the KNES mod, which you can both see in front of you. Tundra Exploration Systems are the BFR rockets and a lot of the SpaceX stuff. If you want to download that, then there's usually links kicking about, but also you'll need KRE, Kerbal Reusability Expansion, which adds a lot of the things that is needed for landing the craft and things like that. The other side of this is KNES, which is a lot of the exploration ideas from the European Space Agency, and I absolutely love that as well. So, on top of that, I might as well add this one while I'm going. DSEV is most of my Estonian pods, and if you see the fancy heat shield with the booster below it, that is from the DSEV mod. It's for a couple of spaceships, a couple of interesting designs for spaceships, a lot of parts that can be used all over the place, and again it's part of Wild Blue Industries, part of Angel 125's mod set, and they all interact with each other, and they also interact with the Tundra Exploration Systems and the KNES. They have the same exchangeable storage on that, which is fantastic for building stations and sending up things and stuff like that. So, on with the show. Now, the first thing up here was after the elapsed time for the mission, I decided to take back my KNES module first and re-enter that fully. However, I'm not sure exactly what went wrong here, but a couple of things did. I lost some fuel. I'm not quite sure what went on. But when I tried to re-enter it, I ran out of fuel, which was sort of expected. However, I also crashed and detonated the entire ship and lost all of the Kerbals. However, when I went back to the save file, it put me back to an earlier stage, just after this video was taken. So I sort of kept this footage of putting it in orbit, because when it went back to this stage, it left this particular ship halfway sort of through one of the videos where I had left it in orbit around Kerbin, and it still left the BFR in orbit at Gilly, so I carried on from there. So for the moment, what you can see is I'm just orbiting this round to the manoeuvre node, and then I actually run out of fuel mid-manoeuvre. So here's us starting the manoeuvre, and as you should know now, once I run out of fuel, I usually try the little get the Kerbal out and push technique, which I did for a little while. However, this thing is now full of tourists and it has one pilot, so I can't keep it aligned because it has no remote control module. I can't keep it aligned with anything when I'm pushing it, which makes it just impossible, especially as you can see there with the amount of time to do it. So, a rescue mission is required. Now, what I did originally was to actually send to decouple this little drone control section and try and move this across so that I could dock up and transfer fuel to the module and see if I could lower the orbit that way. As you can see here, the first thing that I'm doing is just getting rid of this piece of space debris because it's not recognised as debris and I really don't want it in orbit. So I nullify my orbital velocity to drop it to the planet and then boot it out. Now this is the part where it goes hairy, because around about now is where I jump back into, or once I've come back from the save after having lost everybody. So for continuity, let's stop this here. And straight after that, I now have the ability to carry on with the mission. So I've still got that other craft in high orbit, however it's got over a year's worth of supplies. I think it's got 400 days worth of supplies or such, so it can sit there for quite a long time. 400 days might not be a Kerbal year, but anyway, it can live there for a while. So because I've got this in orbit at Gilly, I might as well boot it and get down to the surface and do what I originally intended to do. Now, because of the issue mentioned in the last episode, I am missing some of the parts that I wanted for this. All of the parts that were actually in the main section are not there. But I still have a lot of it in the underneath storage, which I will show you just now. We're just deploying the ladders, then out comes the Kerbal. And once we have the Kerbal out, obviously we have very little gravity. I'm checking to see and realise exactly what's going on. And then we have all of these lovely little storage modules down here. And I have filled them all with interesting goods and things. So the first thing that I do is bring out this big, I think it's called a Roadhouse. Again, this is another part of the Pathfinder. And it's just, I think it's just a massive big thing that can be reconverted into many different useful things. I've not actually used it properly, so this is sort of my exploration of using these things. But it does require concrete and a few other things to assemble, which I don't have just yet, so I'm leaving it in place. And because moving all of this stuff was starting to irritate me, I decided to just unclip everything, because these pods are actually light enough that I can move them about. So I just went round and decoupled every single one. They don't cost much, so I'm not really wasting that much money. And having them on the floor gives me the ability to move them, sort out what's in them a lot easier without having to look up every time. But then we get to this section. Now, I was doing stuff for quite a while, and I ran out of propellant and didn't realise. So a rescue mission is called for. And it's the daftest little thing I've ever had to do, but because I jumped, I hit the jump button to see what was going on, it launched me. I'm not sure if I was on an escape velocity, but I was reacting too quickly to try and figure that out. So Valentina comes out, and she's trying to slow the ascent of Bill or Bob. I can never remember which one's the engineer. Why did they have to go with Bill and Bob? But yeah, we try and slow the ascent, and then we bring them back down, but obviously pushing them back down, I don't think I would gain that much stuff, but I've lost enough Kerbals in this already, and I really don't want to lose more. But we're going through it, we're doing not too bad. I managed to slow the descent to an acceptable manner. I don't really think that was acceptable, but it kind of worked. And because I've got a little EVA mod, and I really don't know the name of this, I need to look for it. That was pretty lazy, but the mod's name is EVA Follower, so I can click on one and get him to literally walk through space while following me. So it's kind of useful to know that this works in space as well. But now that we do that, we get one of our Kerbals back, and that'll give him some more EVA fuel. I mess about with the configuration of this base, just while I've got it, and then recycle some of the parts that are over here. And then it is time to get back into space. So we get our engineer and our pilot back in. We've got the rest of the Kerbals. Obviously there's no IVA for this, or yeah, I think it's IVA, so you can't see them on this main display, but this thing is full of Kerbals. And we just want to do a little orbit and then burn back to the planet. Now this is where I make another mistake. The burn goes nice and smoothly, even if it does take quite a while to get to it. However, my next problem is when I return to Kerbin. Now as you can see here, it's a fairly easy approach, but I need a lot of aerobraking passes. So what I do is I come here, and to make it easier going through the atmosphere, I pull in the solar panels and burn all the fuel, and then pull up to a very heavy inclination to basically belly flop across the atmosphere, try and slow myself down. Now, I can't remember what I lost there, but it wasn't something that important. However, on subsequent routes round, and it took quite a few, I lost both of the solar panels. And that's not too bad, but I made a horrible mistake there. Now, in removing this top section, one of the other things that disappeared was a couple of parachutes that were actually on the top section, and they weren't designed for landing, but they were designed to slow me once I came through the atmosphere. And basically it was an emergency sort of thing that I could flip round, just so that I could put the thing so that the backside was facing towards the ground. But now that they're not there, I don't have any fuel. I burned the last of my fuel. And on top of that, by this point I've managed to dump, I'm not sure if I managed to dump it, but I had the excess liquid fuel, and I managed to dump that. But it has caused me a problem. Now also, as you can see there, I'm having stability issues, and that's because there's supposed to be liquid fuel in the back of the thing to get this thing balanced. But I am managing to get through the atmosphere. There's, as I said, I think there was about 10 or 15 passes at high altitude to get me to slow down enough that I could re-enter the atmosphere. But then once I come in, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to bleed off speed on the way down, and then keep enough speed off to try and control it. Now, one of the things that burned off was also my air brakes. I think that was the first thing that burned off actually. My air brakes exploded, so this is a bit of a problem to try and control. However, I managed to make it glide, and there we go. I actually managed to make the thing land. So with that little shock in the bank, I managed to come up with another idea. And this idea is basically to launch a second craft to recover the first one that's out in high orbit with a whole load of tourists on board. So we send up Valentina, and I can't see on my screen if it's Bill or Bob, but the engineer regardless. Let's call him B. So we send up Valentina and B, and we're just using pretty much the exact same craft. I've changed a few things so that it's carrying, but aside from that, it's all good. And we get that beautiful Eve sky as we're launching. And you've seen this one before, so we'll just skip all the correction and things like that once we get beyond this beautiful sunrise, because it really is beautiful. And it's also a sunrise and a sunset at the same time because I'm heading away from it. So, randomness, and there you go. So, a few corrections later, we actually arrive at the other ship. Now this is at quite high inclination, as you can see there. I'm quite far away from Eve at the moment, but I've still got a bit of fuel, although at this point in time I'm not sure whether I've got enough. But first things first, what we need to do is I need to transfer fuel across. Now what I've noticed is I can't transfer fuel through the grappling hooks. I don't know if that's a stock thing or it's something that's happened in my game, but it's become a royal pain in my backside. So what I actually need to do is to connect this ship to the other one. And for that, I was originally going to use a grappling probe, which is why I extended it, but I decided if I just did this little inversion here, I could get close enough to pull straight from the cargo on one ship and install the docking port on the other. We get a little bit of a throwout, but it all seems to be working, and I managed to get the two crafts back together. Although my OCD kicks in and I'm forced to put the docking port on properly because that would just send me loopy. And once we're connected, there's a little bit of a docking maneuver, and then we burn for atmosphere. Now after this, we managed to get our periapsis down. However, we only take one down because I want to set a little bit above the atmosphere first, transfer a bit of fuel, and then land them one at a time. You don't want to land these together. So because they're slightly more important, the veterans get to go down first, also because they don't have the same amount of life support as the other one. They only actually had about 12 days. But we do our usual breaking through the atmosphere, and yeah, I literally mean breaking, because I seem to do that every time I hit the atmosphere. And it drops us low enough that we managed to do a secondary pass, and then actually a third pass. So we'll just sort of skip through that. But once we get to our fourth pass, it becomes not a pass but a landing. So we managed to sort of skim through the atmosphere, go up a bit, and then come straight back down. So it's a weird sort of bounce off the atmosphere there, but it managed to work. And I just mess about with the gliding, and because I've not really shown these land, in this at least, this is how easy they are. Now, these have a good amount of lift, and at the moment in this, the atmospheric pressure at sea level on Eve is around about 5 times what it is at Kerbin, so the lift off of these things is ridiculous. You can glide them all over the place. So I make a nice little landing. However, these are not fitted with landing gear. I made very basic craft. So there we go. And we are on to the second ones. Now, if you notice a couple of jump cuts in there, there was some stuff going on with the save files, and I've just sort of skipped over it because it was just a pain. But we got everybody back down. As far as I'm aware, I did have to rewrite something, but I don't think I cheated. So if I did, I apologise, but I'm pretty sure that I transferred and balanced all the fuel and got the amounts correct. However, I've been told now that all of these problems I'm having have been sorted, so that shouldn't happen again. And yeah, if this was slightly dishonest, my apologies. I think I made it as accurate as possible, but there was all sorts of stuff going on. But at last we get down to the surface, and I actually managed to put on the brakes before the end, and it's a nice simple landing for a change. And after we get back to the KSC, there's a little bit of bouncing about and sorting out our science and upgrading the tech tree, but that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this episode. As you can see, I have a slightly longer version of the ship for the next episode, but we're running long, so I'll call it here. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time, and there will be no more problems from this bit on. Touch wood, we'll see what happens. Bye!